It was barely 6 a.m. when I fired up my lawnmower, the engine purring as I began trimming the edges of my ranch's expansive yard. The air was crisp, birds were singing, and everything seemed perfectly ordinary, until Karen, predictably, decided that my peaceful early morning was a crime. She stormed over with a phone in hand, shouting that she was calling 911 because the noise violates HOA rules and disturbs the community. I paused mid-mow, watching her flail, shaking my head at the absurdity. This was my land, my rules, and my right to maintain it no matter how early or late I chose. A few minutes later, a patrol car arrived, sirens muted but flashing, as officers cautiously approached. I greeted them with a calm smile and handed over my property deeds, showing them that I was not part of the HOA and that any noise complaints from Karen had no legal standing on my private land. The officers reviewed the documentation and politely advised Karen that she had no authority over my schedule. Her face turned red, a mix of embarrassment and fury, as she realized her 911 call had been utterly pointless. While the officers left, Karen stood fuming, muttering about community rules and civic responsibility. That's when an idea struck me. If Karen wanted to enforce imaginary rules, perhaps it was time she experienced the consequences of her own overreach. Trash day was coming, and our local waste collection service strictly adhered to scheduled pickups. I decided to use it creatively. The next week, I loaded all her trash bins, cans, and recycling containers onto her driveway, but not just on trash day. I staggered the timing, placing bins out daily, adjusting lids, and ensuring that each morning she woke up to a noisy, inconvenient surprise. The smell of compost, the clattering of cans, and the sight of overflowing refuse. Every day, at 6 a.m., she was reminded that life on a private property couldn't be micromanaged by HOA rules or late-night calls. She had made early morning noise her target. Now early morning noise became hers. Neighbors soon began noticing Karen's daily struggle. The sight of her struggling with cans, muttering curses, and adjusting lids became something of a legend in the area. She attempted to complain again, claiming harassment and disruption, but I had carefully adhered to local ordinances. Trash day was a legal, scheduled service. She had no grounds. The situation was both ironic and entirely enforceable. She had used law enforcement to intimidate me over mowing at 6 a.m., and now she was subjected to her own daily alarm clock without violating any laws. Over time, Karen's morning routine became predictable. Each 6 a.m., she would shuffle to the driveway, groaning and sighing, checking lids and moving bins, all under the watchful eyes of neighbors who had learned the story. Her complaints became muted, her threats ineffectual, and her aura of authority crumbled entirely. The HOA had tried to control me, but the tables had been turned in a clever, harmless, and legal way. By the end of the month, Karen's frustration had peaked. She was exhausted, humiliated, and completely aware that she had been bested by someone who knew property rights, local laws, and the power of subtle strategy. I continued mowing at 6 a.m., the sound of the engine a cheerful reminder that rules only apply where authority exists, and that creativity and legal leverage can turn even the most aggressive HOA attempts into harmless but unforgettable lessons. Now, every morning, as I trimmed the grass while the sun rose over the ranch, I smiled. Karen's daily alarm clock was still ticking, a perfect metaphor for her overreach and a lesson for anyone foolish enough to challenge property rights on land they don't own. The lawn was pristine, the HOA was humbled, and early mornings had never been so satisfying.